So now let's talk about if-else statements in Python. Really, this is the core of what most people think programming is. You take a condition, you take a value of a variable, you test it against another value, and if it is true, do something, and if it's not true, do something else, right? That's kind of what we think about when we think about programming. Well, when you're doing if-else statements, it is important to remember there's the if conditional, there's the else conditional, but there's also elif conditionals that are between those two. So if this is true, do something. Elif, basically else if something else is true, do something. Elif, if something else is true, do something. Elif, if something else is true, do something. And then else, if none of these things above are true, then do the final else statement. One of the things that you will see with Python is it is an elif statement. So in a lot of programming languages, basically most programming languages, you have if else statements, and so you'll normally type out else if. The thing with Python, they have to do fancy stuff with their own syntax, so it is elif. That is what you do when you're doing an elif or an else if statement. So now when you're doing the if-else statements, you're going to be using logical conditions. So if you've seen loops, while loops, we basically are using the same conditionals there. Equals means is this value equal to this other value? Remember to do equal sign, equal sign. If you just do equal sign, that is saying this variable should be the same value as this, right? So that's not going to work. Equal equals tests to make sure if the two are the same value. Exclamation point equals means not equal to, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Those are the normal things. Then we have in. So if you're trying to test to see if a string value is within another string value, you would use in. So this is good for testing things like, so when we start interacting with the operating system and we get responses back from the operating system to say, is whatever this particular value, is that in the response that we're getting back from the operating system? If so, do X or Y, right? And then we have not in. What not in is basically it is this string value not in this other string value. So that's how you're able to test for strings or basically text variable values. On top of that, you have what are called operators. So let's say you're doing something like a temperature sensor, or kind of some kind of temperature program, and so you want to have like multiple if-else statements in there. You know, if it's over 100 degrees, so if temp is greater than 100 degrees, then do something. But then you could have, using the operators, if temperature is less than 100 degrees and temperature is greater than 80 degrees, do something. Elif, if the temperature is less than 80 degrees and greater than 60 degrees, do something else. Elif. And so that's basically what operators allow you to do, is be able to test for two conditions within that one statement. So let's take a look at an incredibly simple if-else statement. So let's say we're checking somebody's age, and let's say this is to get into a bar or get into, an adult website. So we're just going to create the variable here called age. We're going to set the value to be 42. We're then simply going to have this basic if-else statement. If age is greater or equal to 21, so this means 21 or above, print, you can come in. Else, basically, if the number is not that, you are too young. So this is a very simple thing. If condition is true, do this. Else, anything else, do this other thing. So the age here is 42. We go to run the script, and we can see that since it's 42, it says you can come in. If I close this out, and let's say I change this to 20, let's say you're so close to being old enough, but you're not old enough. If we then run this, 20 is obviously less than 21, so what you are given is you are too young. So this is the basic idea of what an if-else statement is, and that's really what there is to it. Now let's look at an if if else statement, and we're going to be comparing strings. So basically in this, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be checking about whether the person's name is Bob or whether the person's name is Sue. If it's Bob or Sue, we are going to say something nice to them. If the name is anything else, we're basically going to say, who are you? Who are you? I don't know who you are, right? So we have the variable up here, name equals Bob. If name equals Bob, then print hello, kind sir. If name equals Sue, print hello, my lady. Else, any other name out there, print who are you. So this is basically all there is to the if else statement, and in this one I'm showing you how you can compare a string. So the name here is Bob, and so when we run this as Bob, we can see that the output is going to be hello, kind sir, as it should be. Then we go up here and I plug in Sue. So now that Sue is the name, it says hello, my lady. Again, that's the if there. And then, what if Phil wants to come in? Phil has heard this is a really cool place to be, wants to get in on the action. And when Phil tries to come in, the person says, who are you? You are not in our system. And so this is the basic idea of how that if works in here. So you check for this condition. If this condition is true, then this is what happens. If this condition is not true, it goes down the line to the if to check on this. If this is not true, it goes down the line, goes down the line, goes down the line, all the way to the else. And one of the important things to understand with these conditionals is it does go from top to bottom. So as soon as the condition is met, it will drop out of this if-else statement. So you do have to be careful that for some reason something isn't true when it shouldn't be true. That can get a little bit complicated. You'll see that at some point when you start playing with some projects, but do just realize this goes from top to bottom. As soon as a condition is true, it will run that particular command, and that is that. So in this example, we're going to be using a while true loop. So this is a continuous loop so that you can keep putting in different data and see what the response is going to be. And we're going to be using these operators. So if age is less than 60 and age is greater or equal to 21, do something. So this is what we're talking about with the operators. Basically, two conditions have to be true within this singular statement. And so what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be checking on somebody's age. What is your age? And based off of your response, you're going to get an answer, right? We're going to be using the input function like we do for a lot of these examples. You will notice we use float here. So we put the input function within the float function. So when you use input, the data type that's going to come back is going to be a string. Even if the number is 55, if the data type is string, then none of this is going to work. It has to be a data type of number for these conditions to actually work out. So we're going to have a variable name of age. It's going to ask you what your age is, and it's going to turn that into a float. We're going to turn it into a float because if we turn it into an int, there's no decimal points. So if I put 50 and a half, 50.5, that will remain. If this was an int and I put in 50.5, the .5 would go away. Then we're going to come down here. If age is greater or equal to 60, so if you were above 60, print you are old. Uh-oh. This might be the day I get canceled. Silicon Dojo gets shut down because Eli the computer guy said 60-year-olds are old. Anyways, basically if the age is above 60, you are old. If age is less than 60 and age is greater or equal to 21, print you are an adult, so you're a normal adult. If age is less than 21 and age is greater or equal to 18, you are a young adult. Hey, good news, you're old enough to pay taxes, but not old enough to drink your misery away with alcohol. Hey, welcome to being an adult. And then else, if none of this is true, print out you are young. Now it is important to understand when you start having these if, these statements here, that basically as soon as one of these conditions is met, then the statement will break and you'll stop with wherever you're at. So this should be pretty simple. You shouldn't run into any problems. But let's say you were checking for something like name or age or gender and age. You might write into a problem where like one thing triggers and is true and you drop out before a different condition is true. So just be careful with that. As soon as the condition is true, then that code will fire off and you'll drop out of the if-else statement. So when we go and we actually go to run this script, it's going to ask me what my age is. I'm going to say 77. Oh! And then Eli gets canceled. You are old. Anyways, then we're going to say I'm 55. You are an adult. I'm going to say that I'm 19. It's going to say you are a young adult. And if I say I'm 3, it's going to say that you are young. And so basically this is a way for you to be able to play around, plug in different numbers, and see what the response is. This might not be the best example for dealing with numbers. Something you might think about a little bit more is something like sensor values. So let's say you had a temperature control system, right? And so if the temperature is above 100, you may want to trigger the air conditioner to turn on. If the temperature is less than 100 but over 80 degrees, you might want to trigger the fan to turn on. If the temperature is below 80, but let's say above 50, you might not want anything to happen at all. That's fine. That's a great temperature. If the temperature is below 50 or else possibly, then you might actually want to turn the heater on because, you know, the room might be getting too cold. So this kind of thing is great for things like those sensor values where you can actually have a wide range of values and you want to trigger different events based off of, you know, subsets within that range. But this is the basic idea here of these elif statements and these operators. It gets pretty easy once you start playing around with it a little bit. So now this final example might be a little bit advanced for where you're at, but I think it shows you where you're going with Python. Again, one of the most valuable things with Python is Python can interact with the underlying operating system. It is able to use the command line tools that are already there, get the values back from the responses, and then be able to do something based off of those values. So if you can't fully follow what this example does, don't worry. As we go through this Python series, it will start to make more sense. If nothing else, this will be a little bit of foreshadowing. So basically what we're going to be doing here is, in this particular example, we're going to be trying to ping hosts, and if the host is reachable, we want to print out on the screen that the ping worked, and if the host is unreachable, we're going to print out that the host can't be pinged. So one of the things that I like with Python labs is basically doing things like network testing systems, network diagnostics, little applications. The reason is because you're dealing with real world dynamic data that will give you all kinds of wacky responses back. And so it's nice because you're actually interacting with the real world, and then you can see the weird ways that your script may actually fail. But anyways, for this particular one is just giving you a really simple idea of how to be able to use Python to ping a host, get the response back, and then do something based off of that response. So we're going to import the OS module here. So the OS module allows you to interact with that underlying operating system. And then we're going to have a command here. Now this command is going to be good for either Mac OS or Linux. This command is not going to work properly in Windows. And that's Windows issues. If you're on Windows, don't worry. Go grab a Linux machine. Anyways, the command here, the initial part of the command, is going to be ping space -c. This is for count, 1 space. So basically what it's going to say is we want to ping for a count of 1 something. In the Linux and the Mac world, when you do a ping, it will continuously ping until you force it to stop. So if you don't put this count here, you're actually going to lock up your script because literally you'll never get the final response back. So anyways, we're going to do the ping. Do make sure to put the space here because essentially we're going to put the host on the other side. So we're going to do a while true loop. Host equals input, host to ping. So basically, what host are we trying to ping? CNN.com, 192.168.1.1, Fox News, whatever else. Response equals the OS module, the .popen function. So there's a popen function. What this does is it sends a command to the operating system, and then it actually gets a response back. So there's different functions in the OS module, and not all of them will actually give you a response back. This will give you a response back. We're going to use the F string. So F string is you can concatenate text. So the command is going to get plugged in here, and then the host is going to get plugged in here, and then we do the .read method. So the object that comes back from this, we want to turn into a string. Right? We're going to print out the response on the screen, just so we know what's going on, since you people are new, just to see what you're looking at. Then if one packet's received in response. So the response is going to come back, and we're going to look for one packet's received. Now this will work on Mac OS. I do believe on Linux, it is one packet received. And that's the kind of thing you have to be careful about in like the Python world. One packet is different than one packets. Anyways, in response. If one packet's received is in response, we're going to print out the ping worked, else print host can't be pinged for whatever reason. So now when I go to run this, I'll run this and I'll do CNN.com. We're going to print the entire response, and then we're going to print ping worked. So see this, one packet's received. So since one packet's received was in the response, this is what we're going to print out here. We'll do Fox. We'll be fair and balanced. We'll do Fox.com. We've pinged Fox.com. Again, we see one packet's received, and it'll say ping worked. Now let me do, let's say, 192.168.1.33. Hopefully that doesn't exist. Okay, it's trying to ping. It will most likely fail out here. And when it fails out, may take a second. Okay, so basically, we ping 192.168.1.33. It was transmitted, 0 packets received, and so it says host can't be pinged. And so basically, this is how we're able to tie something like the OS module, being able to send commands directly to the operating system, then based off of the values that are coming back, then do something. So imagine if you had this script running and you had a list of multiple hosts. Again, Fox.com, Google.com, TacoBell.com, CNN.com, and you wanted to verify that the sites are up. You just wanted a continuous verification that you were connecting to the internet. So basically, you could have this continuously loop, and basically if the ping worked properly, you could write that to something like an HTML file. Else, if it didn't work properly, you might try to send a text message to yourself, if that would actually work, or you could send it, or you could write that to an HTML file. So basically, you can use this to do something like, again, like a network monitoring tool to make sure the sites that your company needs are actually reachable, and it's all relatively simple. So that's basically what there is to if, else statements. It's one of those things you just got to play around with it, and it gets to be really easy. Where this stuff does get to be fun though, where again Python actually becomes interesting, is when you start to get to interact with other systems. Again, with this particular example with the OS module, when you're able to launch operating system level commands, be able to get the response back and do something based off the response, that's when you start to get to do some really fun and cool things. Once we start dealing with things like APIs and REST APIs, that's where you're going to be communicating out with other people's services, something like OpenAI for artificial intelligence services, weather services with Open Weather, that type of thing. That's when your code can go out, communicate, and then based off the response that you're getting back, you can trigger different types of events to occur. That's when things get to be really fun. But the basics here, again, if-else statements, it's if, elif, else, just play around with it and you'll be fine.